Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. Do me a favor, go up there now. I have a story on Jaden Daniels. Talked to a bunch of coaches at the NFL owners meetings a couple weeks ago, and just to get their thoughts on how do you help a young player build off the type of season he had? How do you make sure they keep evolving? Because the league's going to try and figure him out. He's got to do his part, and they have to do their part to help Daniels continue to grow, which I don't doubt that he will. But anyway, some really good stuff in there from coaches like Sean McVay, talked to Raheem Morris, Andy Reid, Zach Taylor, bunch of guys, Mike McDaniel. So a lot of guys who have had experience tutoring quarterbacks in the NFL and know what they're talking about. Or Brandon Bead, the GM of the Bills, had to build around Josh Allen. So that's up on ESPN.com right now. So give that a read for me as please. Thank you. Anyway, in a minute, I'll be joined by ESPN NFL draft analyst Matt Miller. And I had him on last week. Last week we talked about the offensive players in the draft. Today, the whole conversation will be about the defensive players in the draft who are possibilities at 29 for Washington and also some maybe to watch down the road. Now, I will say, in talking to a bunch of people over the last week or so, I've got some other things to throw out there. I'm going to get to that later, likely later in the week or early next week, because the draft is, less than 2 weeks away now, folks. So I'll get to some of that, but just some intel you pick up, some players to watch in late, maybe in first round, mid rounds, later rounds, et cetera. We'll get to all that in a minute or in a few days. But first, I want to bring on Matt Miller and get his expertise because this is what he does, folks. So anyway, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, one little quick nugget in case you didn't see, the Washington signed quarterback Josh Johnson, who of course played for them in 2018. They signed him on Friday to a one-year deal. So he's going to be in camp competing for the last quarterback spot on the roster between, obviously Jaden will be on there. Marcus Mariota, excuse me, will be on there. They need to see how Sam Hartman progresses. And in case he doesn't, now you have Josh Johnson there, very similar to how they had it last year with Jeff Driscoll in that same role. I know like they would have liked to have Driscoll back. Driscoll wants to go somewhere where perhaps he has a chance to compete for the number two job, which was not going to happen here. He had a good camp last year, but Mariota's experience, it's what they brought him here for. That's why he's in that role. So, anyways, so Johnson comes in there for that role. He, of course, is ultra experienced. This is his second stint in Washington. He's played for, I think it's now like 13 different franchises in the NFL. You have to be doing something right to play for that many teams in the NFL, that many teams. Not that he's a great player, but you've got to be a true pro that people want to bring you in because you have to be a quick study. He's played in so many different offenses, has a lot of experiences to share with others and wisdom, and he also can pick up things pretty quickly. That's why he has been signed all around the league. And plus, one of the benefits he has, I remember when he came here in 2018, and obviously they signed Mark Sanchez first. I know there were people here, Jay Gruden, pushing more for Josh Johnson because of his ability to make plays with his legs. So that's why he felt during that season that he could make a quicker impact than a guy like Sanchez, who perhaps was a more talented passer at the time, but with the ability to be multidimensional, that would help any offense. And we saw that season. But you also, like I said, he's a true pro. That's why you last this long in the league. If you're not that way, you're not going to bounce around. And I think like all those experiences, and he's talked about that, how much it's helped him. It's helped him grow as a player. It helps your knowledge. And that knowledge can now be passed around to not just to Jaden Daniels, but also to Sam Hartman. It's nice to have another guy that could help maybe Hartman's development to be in the role that Johnson is in. So, anyways, all that being said, he's now here, and we'll see if he makes a roster. It's not a guarantee; it's a one-year deal, and I do think a lot of it depends on how does Hartman look. But you want to have four quarterbacks in camp regardless, just to just for to have more arms in camp, more guys who can run drills, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, but a good signing by Washington just because, again, the guy's a true pro, and that's always a good thing to add. I think he'll fit well in that quarterback room. That quarterback room was really good last year with Daniels, Mariota, Driscoll, and Hartman, and I think it'll stay the same with Johnson. Can't say that enough, that he's just a good pro. So, anyways, that's enough for me. Here's my conversation now with ESPN NFL draft analyst Matt Miller. Coming back for the defense now, Matt. They could use an edge rusher. This seems like a good draft for edge rushers. Who do you like at 29 right now in that
Yeah,
range?
it's gonna be interesting, John, to see who slips through the cracks. Samar Stewart from Texas A&M could be there. In my conversations with scouts, that's about his range, even though he's tested, as one of the best defensive end prospects ever. He only had 4.5 sacks in 3 years of college. So there's some boom or bust with him, which is why he could be available at 29. Same with Michael Williams from Georgia, another guy who was expected to test really well. Didn't. He's, been working off an ankle injury from the season. And also, like, you watch him in the 2 games against Texas, you think he'd be a top 5 pick in the draft. But the rest of the time, he was kind of quiet. So both those guys have massive potential. They just didn't always show it. Donovan Azuruku from Boston College. He's interesting because he's undersized, but he has long arms. And my goodness, he has some power to his game that you don't expect for a guy that's 6'2", 250. So if you wanted a little bit more just speed off the edge to make a play in almost a wide nine, I would go more toward Azaraku. But Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart are both the prototypical 4-3 defensive ends who could very, very much be there at 29.
And it's funny because I hear these mixed ranges on Stewart. Like some say, oh, he's top 10. But
Right?
I don't know. Why wasn't, I know there were a lot of pressures. In your opinion, why weren't there more big sacks or big plays?
Yeah, I know he said at the combine that it was about the scheme. I disagree with that. To me, he looks like an athlete right now, not a football player. I don't think he always knows how to counter his moves. I don't know that he's always super aware of what the offense is doing. And he needs to play more. That's the key. Like, he needs to play more so that the game can start to open up and start to slow down for him a little bit. But that the athletic tools that he has are impossible to find, at the level that he has them. So, a lot of teams are going to take a chance on that.
As Araku. And it's funny because when I watch him and he's really, really good. And then I watch some of the tackles that he goes against, like, you're turning your back to him, dude. What are you doing? But he has an array of moves that you don't often see in college, right? Or what do you think?
Right. No, absolutely. And his Senior Bowl was really good. And
Yeah.
so the Senior Bowl was when I bumped him up after seeing
Okay.
him in Mobile because I was with you on tape. I was like, gosh, he's got some speed moves, but that doesn't work all the time. You have to
Right.
have more than just an outside speed rush. We get to the Senior Bowl and he's like, oh, here's a power game and here's my long arm. It's like, oh my, okay. He's got more to his game or he's been working on it, one of the two. So I like him a lot. He's very scheme specific. You're going to need to be able to play him in space. Teams like Washington, Philadelphia, he's going to be a fit for. Teams like Cincinnati, Kansas City, not as much because they want some bigger, stronger players on the end. So I'm a fan of his. His production this past year was fantastic, and he does have all the tools to be really good in the pros.
Mike Green, I know there are questions about him and Pierce about character, whatever, but your assessment of them as players.
Yeah, Mike Green as a player should be a top 15 pick. Just I think he's the best pure pass rusher outside of Abdul Carter. What he does from a speed perspective, how he uses his hands. We saw a power element to his game at the Senior Bowl that I didn't really expect to see for his size. So just on field, he should be a top 15 pick. James Pierce is kind of like Azaraku, where he's so long and lean that you want more power in this game. He doesn't always show that. Whereas with Donovan, you would see some power. So I think for Pierce, like, he's going to have to add lower body strength. It's almost like Nolan Smith when he was coming out of,
Okay.
okay, there's a speed element to your game, a length element to your game that's really good. But for you to be more than just a situational pass rusher, you're going to have to get stronger. So that's kind of the bucket that I would put him into. And he could be, I mean, the range on him is all over the place.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable with the character, he could go top 20. If you're not, he could go late second round. And so I think he'll be one of the names to definitely be monitoring as we get into the draft.
Two other edge guys, Landon Jackson, Femi Oladaju.
Oh my gosh, I've seen Landon Jackson play in person like 4 times, and he's always the best player on the field when you go to Arkansas. He stands out, the size, the strength. He came in a little bit lighter at the Senior Bowl in the combine than I expected, but I thought it worked well with his athletic ability. He uses his length really, really well. He stacks up against the run. I wish he had been more productive, for the tools that he has. I think
Right.
that's probably my biggest complaint. And then with Femi, he has had such a meteoric rise in the past 4 months. I think because, you watch the UCLA tape, and they're putting him everywhere. He's playing in space, he's playing in the slot at times. Other times he's rushing the quarterback. And we got to the Senior Bowl, and you got to see what he does just as a primary rusher, not as a space player, and it was fantastic. And I had the opportunity to sit down with him for quite a while in Mobile, and just was incredibly impressed with him as a person. The way he thinks about the game, how dialed in he is. And I've heard the same. Like when teams get around him, they love him. So I would put him in that second round range. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 50 pick.
And that's what I was going to ask you if they waited because I think they do like him. You can like a lot of players in the draft. It's
Yeah.
their pick 61. Is that too late to wait for him, do you think?
It might be. We'll see if this run on defensive ends happens. If five go in the first round, then we could see these dudes fly off the board in the second. But I would say like that's about his range. Late second round is where I would expect him to be called.
And he's a guy that I really like because he's so new to the position too, and he does have the
Yep.
versatility. And I also think he's a Dan Quinn type player, so that always helps. Cornerback, they could use another corner, a longer corner. Here are the traits they want: the guys who can, ball skills, short area quickness, and toughness.
Yeah.
What do you like?
That's what we all want.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
I'd
this
say
year's
like
light,
yeah, it's
right?
like
Yeah, like that.
HGTV. We all want all
Right.
the goods for the houses. Yeah,
Right. Right. But our budget is
right,
$100,000. Yeah.
right,
This
right.
corner class is kind of light on those guys. I like Trey Amos
Yeah,
from Ole Miss. He would fit that mold. I think 29 is about his range. 23 to 31 is probably where he gets drafted. He's physical. He's a press corner who has, the speed to be sticky in phase. Ezra Thomas from Florida State, just didn't test very well. I like him on tape, and I think he is that long physical corner, but it's the speed questions are going to be there for him, and it pushes him to the second round. I think two guys coming off injury: Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame, who had the hip, excuse me, and then Savone Ravel from East Carolina, who had the ACL. I like both those guys as if they hadn't got hurt, first round picks. So
okay.
it's just a matter of where do you see them in their rehab? How comfortable are you, with guys coming back? Are they going to have to take a red shirt? For Benjamin Morrison, he tore that labrum in his hip twice, once in high school, once in college. So that raises some question marks, but on tape, they're both first round players.
Hairston's another guy that it's funny because like some people think like, yeah, he can tackle. Other people think that he doesn't want to tackle. And so what's your take on him overall as a player? And I bring that up because I do think that's an absolute part of their evaluation here.
Yeah, I mean, the speed shows up. Yeah, he was the
Right.
fastest guy at the combine, so it's not surprised. But even watching him work through positional drills at the combine, like his footwork is elite. He's so quick, but he's undersized. And I think that's going to be the key with him is like watch him against Texas and he was elite, or watch the Senior Bowl, he was great. Missed 5 games with injury. He's lean, he's short armed, but when he's been on the field, he's been productive. I think he had 5 picks in 2023. He's just, 5'11", 175, 180, and he's, I think, 31 and a half inch arms. So he doesn't fit that mold of a big boundary
Right.
receiver, but as a nickel, I mean, goodness, he could be a problem.
And then, yeah, and I think that would be interesting with him. Safety. Is there is Emin would he be a chance at 29? And what would you think about a team picking him?
If he's there at 29, I love that because I've been calling him Derwin James 2.0. I
Yeah,
mean, 6'3", 220 with 4.3 speed. Oh, and he had 4 picks last year. So it's not just that he has
right.
lightweight speed. He was productive. He's a true junior, so he's still an ascending player, still getting better. I would absolutely love him there, especially in a division where you have someone like Jalen Hurts with Saquon Barkley on the same team. You need somebody that can come downhill and make plays, but also can cover on the back end. I still like Malachi Starks. I know he had a down year, but as a true free safety, I'm a big believer of his. I mean, 3 years of All-American production at Georgia. They're pretty good at producing NFL players, so I think he's a safe bet.
And then last one would be a middle linebacker. And I don't know because they just re-signed Bobby Wagner. They've got Luvu. I know they like Jordan McGee. They moved Dominique Hampton from safety to linebacker. But again, if you want to build a good roster, you take the best player. Is there a guy that would tempt you, whether 29 or even in the second round?
Yeah, at 29, Jahad Campbell would. And there's a conversation about is he an edge? Is he an inside linebacker? He's coming up. There's a knee injury question, but he would absolutely tempt me at 29 and kind of draft him and then figure out how to use him is how I would look at it. Carson Schweschinger, excuse me,
Right.
from UCLA would tempt me in round two. former walk on, a little bit undersized, he's about 225, but his instincts are elite. And his sideline to sideline speed isn't always, top tier, but he makes up for it with those instincts. And he's just a hell of a player. Like he has that, kind of infectious ability that I think every coach is going to fall in love with once they get a chance to see him.
Are there some last thing, are there some defensive guys around 6 and 7? Because it's funny because I hear the NIL is kind of keeping a lot of guys in school, which depletes some of the depth. But are there some guys in that 6, 7 range that you like? I really like this guy defensively down here.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I like Jabbar Muhammad. He'll be a slot corner coming out of Oregon. Dante Trader, safety from Maryland, the guy in the backyard, really good player. Hunter Wohler is a hard-hitting safety from Wisconsin. So, yeah, that's a great point, John. I think there is a little bit of a lack of depth this year, but there's guys that are going to slip through the cracks. Dan Jackson, a safety from Georgia, who he's going to be a hell of a special teams player, and he might be a third safety. He's going to be a seventh round pick, but he's going to play in the league and he'll probably play for 7, 8 years.
You need that. I'm sorry, I apologize. Derek Harmon. I know he's an inside guy, but is he?
Yeah.
Because like if you're going to draft inside, you better get a guy who can rush the passer for what they need. Would you go that route? What do you think of him?
Oh, I love him. This what he did in his 1 year at Oregon. I mean, he plays violent. He's aggressive. He could play anywhere from five all the way down to a one technique. So he gives you a lot of versatility up there. Uh, Mason Graham's going to be gone. Walter Nolan probably going to be gone. So Harmon is, this is not a great pass rushing defensive tackle class. So he's certainly the best on the board.
Matt, I appreciate your time as always. I know you're busy, so I love the insight. Thank you very much, man.
Yep. Thanks, John.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Matt for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Tuesday with another episode. I'll be joined by the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein, as we discuss the case for going defense early in the draft for Washington. I'll talk to you next time.